Hey, good afternoon, Moneta. How are you, everybody?
Hi, Mark. Hi, everybody. Very
We
well.
allowed to
Very
say?
well.
Uh, are we allowed to say what a wonderful dress you have on today?
Yes, you might be watching this in the future, but today is State of Origin Day, so I'm wearing my maroon dress, and I also
And
have my maroon jersey, my maroon scarf right here for Queensland. So I'm a
very
very
good.
patriotic Queenslander today.
Although we do work with people from other states as well and do a very good job,
We do, and we
regardless
love you
of.
all, but we're going for Queensland tonight.
Absolutely. Well, we've seen a lot of each other today, so
We've been busy.
this is actually our third meeting today, but it's been great and it's been interesting, and
Yes.
it's just the joy in my life is when we get to help people get all this stuff together, and the peace of mind that's created when it all comes together, and we can put things in place that will create certainty, confidence, and security for people. So, your thoughts on the day before we get stuck into this?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting day. We've been meeting with a few different clients and their other advisors, which is something we talk about a lot, which can really help the process. And did I just say communication? So we've already said it, and it's a record 1 minute.
There you go, 1 minute
But
40.
it's been a very fruitful day, and we've really, I think, progressed in what we've been trying to deliver for those clients today.
Yeah, look, it's one of the interesting observations, and I've written about this in one of my books, and this isn't a pick on accountants by any means, because the accountants are a very important part of the whole process. But occasionally we come across some people, and we've really had two instances today. Well, certainly I have, is one of our clients who have engaged both myself and you, Anita, and their accountant, when we sort of contacted them for information in regard to the client. The accountant was sort of very much, well, why did they need to engage you two guys? I could have done all this, which is kind of strange because, one, they're not a lawyer, so they certainly can't do the wills, and two, they don't have the process that I've created that helps people go through this structured way of creating family harmony, having the meetings with all the children and so on, and knowing how we've developed that process over years. So it's kind of interesting, and it's an interesting observation of sometimes other professional advisors kind of get jealous of us when we turn up, and I'm not sure whether it's because they haven't done anything, and us turning up and starting and doing the whole process. We certainly don't intend to make anyone look bad. We just want to do a good job for the client. So I'm not sure what the issue is there. And the second one was where we were talking about putting testamentary trusts in place for one of our clients, or sorry, you guys were putting the testamentary trusts in place. I can't. And the accountant, who hadn't been involved in the communication directly with us, was pretty much trying to talk the clients out of it. And as it turned out, it was purely because they didn't understand the way that the testamentary trusts were structured. And as I say, this is not pick on accountants by any means, but it was kind of two instances where other professional advisors were in effect putting spanner in the works because they didn't fully understand what it is that you guys were doing and what I do, I guess.
Yeah, I think in the first instance, example, what is often really important from our point of view is to speak to those other advisors, because it's quite understandable that a client will have a trusted advisor, a trusted accountant, or a financial planner that they've worked with for a long time, and they should most definitely remain in the process. They are very valuable. So they are more valuable than not being in the process. I think what's useful is when we as lawyers are able to explain to them why we're asking for information. So it's not because we're looking for mistakes. It's not because we're trying to take the client away. It's because we're coming from a different point of view, and the information that we can get from them will help us make recommendations to the client that are informed recommendations, and give them options, and not sort of leave anything out because we didn't look at a financial statement, for example. So it's all about working together as a team. And I think when we are able to explain the reason why we're asking that information from example the accountant, then it becomes a lot more comfortable and a lot more better teamwork between the different players.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's absolutely no doubt that what we do is teamwork. Is in some ways, I guess I'm the quarterback, and we have to work together. With yourselves as the solicitors, or whoever the solicitor is, the accountants, financial planners, investment advisors, and other people that they have professional relationships with. And I guess the difficulty for the accountants, and sometimes maybe why they feel left out of the loop a little, is that probably out of all the advisors that a person has, the accountant knows more about their client than anyone else does. I mean, the accountant knows, they don't just know the financial situation, they understand what got the client to that financial situation, or they've had because they have an annual relationship where they're meeting the client at least once, twice, 3, 4 times a year, and they become a very integral part of a client's life. So, and they're a very important part of our process as well. But it's just interesting sometimes that they sort of see us as the enemy rather than as an ally, and trying to keep the whole team together. Sometimes, not very often.
And I think it's really useful for us to be able to have that communication with a constant conversation with the accountant or the financial planner, because as lawyers, we will come from a specific point of view, such as an asset protection or a legal point of view. But it may be that an option we're giving the client might not be, when you take everything into account, the best option. So that's where we want some input from the accountant, for example, to say, that's a good idea, I get it, but from a tax perspective, this is why it's set up like this. And if that's the case, then in the overall scheme of things, it may be better to leave things as they are. So that's where it's really important to just make sure everyone knows what the options are and the pros and cons, and then make an informed decision collectively as to what's the best way forward.
Yep, we can't know everything up front, and so on. So no, it's all about teamwork. But I had another question for you, and it's absolutely gone out of my head, but it was a really, really good question. And it'll it'll come back in a minute.
I think the law's always changing too, remember, slowly, but it does change. So it's our job as lawyers to keep on top of the evolving law, but it may be that other professionals, just like we don't know what necessarily is changing from accounting and financial planning rules and perspectives, like the reciprocal is the case. So it's a good opportunity for us to be able to impart that knowledge and vice versa, which is why it's really important to work as a team.
Absolutely. So a great example, Juanita, was let's have a quick conversation around testamentary trusts. Now this is a tool that's been available for 20 years, more 30 years. I mean, I remember years and years and years ago, we were doing seminars around Australia talking about with a lawyer talking about testamentary trusts and how everyone needed one. So do you have a recollection of how long they've actually been an estate planning tool, or am I putting you on the spot here? A while before you were born.
Certainly ever since I've been practicing, and so that's they've always been around. They've had sort of flavour of the months, or I suppose, or trusts come in and out of flavour, but they're certainly a very important part of our estate planning for our clients. And we're not certainly saying that every single person needs a testamentary trust. That's definitely not the case. And, no one client is the same. But generally, when you have significant wealth, and by significant wealth, you might not even realise that you do, because these days with super, etc., it can all add up, especially for young families, when if something was to happen both of you together and you've got children, that wealth can be quite substantial. So testamentary trusts are really useful for most clients, not all, and they have been around for a long time, but it's certainly an option that we would consider for all our clients.
Sure, but the interesting point I was going to make was that even in my own family, and I mean sometimes it's hard to be a prophet in your own land, but even in my own family, I've had family members who have argued with me in regard to why you'd want a testamentary trust. Remember, I'm not the lawyer, so I'm not giving you legal advice, but just talking in general terms about testamentary trusts. I had one of my siblings arguing with me and saying, what would you want one of those for? And I just shook my head, because obviously they have less education in regard to legal matters and estate planning matters than I do, hopefully. But it was just interesting seeing someone who was putting up an argument, and happens in other families too, putting up an argument about something that really didn't have a lot of information about, but somewhere they've read on the back of a Pantel's packet that they're not a good thing to have. Yeah. So it was interesting, and we'll have that conversation as we have talked about testamentary trusts before. But as you say, they're not always. You don't always need one, but it's better to have one in your will and not want it than want it and not have it.
Yeah, that's right. And the wills, we do give that flexibility. So we draft it such that there is one in there, but if you don't want one, you can choose not to. But if it's not in there, you don't even have that choice. I think once people realise the benefits of testamentary trust, such mainly asset protection in different circumstances, and there's tax benefits and keeping assets in the bloodline, all those sort of things, they understand that. But the usual, objection, if you want, for want of a better word, we might get is, well, I don't have much. But as I just sort of alluded to before, when you think it through, especially for young people that have a young family, if I could throw some figures up, you might have, the only asset you might have is the house you own together. There might be a few $100,000 equity in that, let's say, but you might have super and you might have life insurance. So between the two of you, that could be another 500,000 or so. And so if something was to happen to you both in an accident, then all of a sudden your little children are inheriting close to $1 million. So when you get your head around that, that's a fairly significant amount that you'd want to protect. Now you're going to make everyone dizzy.
The reason I sort of zoomed out a bit was so that we could all see your hands when you get excited.
Oh, my puppet hands.
started to get animated and so on. Now, I have written down 3 things to ask you today, Juanita, and I want the listeners, please. This is not an opportunity necessarily for Juanita to say how smart she is and how not so smart everyone else is, because that's whilst it's probably true, we don't want to promote that too much. But the first question is, and I've talked about this before, the number of times that clients have engaged me and we've sat down and had a look at their current wills, and I'm still going to go with this number. I like to say it's 97%, but for me it's still actually 100% of wills that I have seen from clients when I've given them to you guys and so on, or other solicitors to have a look at them, grossly inadequate in regard to testamentary trusts, asset protection. So I keep coming back to the example of the clients we had that were probably worth $45 million, and they had a 2-page will. So I'm just going to ask the question and ask you to answer this objectively for us, if you would, Juanita. Why does that happen? Why do lawyers deal with clients who probably have a significant net worth and just give them the vanilla version rather than taking the time to really work out what they need, what the family situation is, what the dynamics are? Any hazard a guess as to why that happens?
Look, I think sometimes we see wills that are inadequate for a number of reasons. One is they might have been done a long time ago when circumstances are different. So
being kind.
So as time evolves and wealth is built up, those wills that were put in place, which is certainly better than no wills, some time ago, have now become inadequate for the family's circumstances. I think also often the solicitor might just want to appease the client and put something cheap and simple in place without explaining the value behind different types of wills. So it's important to explain what value you can pass on to the client by a certain provision in a will, and how much it would save you by not having on there, for example, in dollar terms, because all of a sudden you can see that it's worth that little bit of extra investment to pay for a more details, not the best word I'm looking for, but a will that covers all your issues more. So it's sort of understanding it. Yeah, comprehensive is good. I'm explaining that sort of value. We've talked a lot before about will kits and that sort of thing. And there's no doubt about it that sort of basic will or will kit or whatever you might want to call it doesn't cover everything you need to cover in an estate plan. So it doesn't cover assets that are outside your estate, doesn't cover necessarily super. Often another thing that just jumped in my mind is, wills are also a good opportunity to nominate who you'd want to be guardians of your children if both of you were to pass away. So often we might see wills that don't address that. So that's a really powerful thing that you can put in a will. That's really important too. So they're all sort of examples of things we might see. Another thing too, I suppose, is if if something's been left in a will, an asset might have been left, but you or your solicitor maybe didn't really understand how that asset was actually owned. So if I left you my house, Mark, it's no good if I own that with my husband because he's going to get that irrespective. And all of a sudden the intentions that you wanted to carry out won't be carried out. And that's a real problem, actually. So that's another reason why we do the little due diligence that we do that we've often spoken about as part of the process of putting estate planning in place, to tick off all those sorts of things and make sure they're covered.
Sure, yeah, but and I raise this because I was speaking with one of your colleagues the other day, and what we found is that a lot of times people go to the big name lawyers and just assume, which you should never do in anything in life, assume that they're going to get a fantastic will and it's all going to be taken care of. And when I was talking to this person the other day, another lawyer, he was talking about one of the clients that came in to see him last week, and there was 2 children involved, and the testamentary trusts had been included in the will, but there were just no provisions for those testamentary trusts to be protected for each individual family, or if one person died without children, for that to go over to the other sibling and so on. There's some really simple things that meant a whole lot of taxation implications and so on. So a second opinion in regard to your estate planning is just such a valuable thing. And if you ever get that opportunity to, if you're watching this and you think, gee, I've spent a lot of money with one of the big name lawyers, I'm just going to say, sometimes it's not a bad idea just to get a second opinion in regard to your estate planning, because there might be some things that have been missed, and there might be some tax law changes and so on since you got it done. And so I'm just suggesting you take that opportunity. But I'm always, don't know why I shouldn't be anymore, but I'm always surprised when I see meet new clients and the quality of their current plans aren't necessarily all that good. So the next question is, and we talk about GPs and specialists, and knowing that, if you had a brain tumor, you wouldn't be going to a GP to get your advice. You'd be off to the best specialist in Australia or your town, or your state or whatever to get advice. So what is it that the GPs, when it comes to lawyers, estate planning lawyers, or I guess just GP lawyers, because they're probably not even focusing on estate planning, in 50 words or less, what's the biggest difference between someone who's a specialist in this area and the GP who just says, yep, I can do your will, I can do your estate plan?
Yeah, I think once upon a time we'd see the GP being able to cover a lot of areas, but as the laws evolved, things have changed in recent times. Things like I've already said, super, contesting wills, and to be able to really give the best advice, you really need to be on top of those things all the time. So, for example, in our firm, like most firms, we'll have different teams, different departments, and we have a specific estate, wills and estates department. And so we certainly, I couldn't certainly not give you family law advice or environmental law advice. Like it's just not what I do. And the flip also applies. So over time, this law has become a lot more specialised. It's really evolved. It's ever evolving. And so I think where once upon a time, most solicitors could just whip out a will, and probably still can just whip out a basic will. It's almost like what you don't know, you don't know. And like anything, this sort of is something that's certainly evolved and has become a specialist area of the law.
That was a good 50 words. Thank you. You did a great job.
Oh, you've never cut me down for 4.
I thought if I give you 50, I'd get 250 or 300. But one of the things is that we talk about, probably about 3% of the lawyers in Australia are actually genuine, serious specialists in this area, and everyone else not so much. And one of the suggestions I make when people are saying, well, who should I go and see to get my my wills done or whatever, is look on the door or the business card, and if it says specialising in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if they specialise in family law, property law, conveyancing, and down there somewhere is estate planning. If estate planning is mentioned with 5 or 10 other things, they're just not going to be a specialist in this area. So always look for someone who eats, sleeps, breathes, and dreams about estate planning, and then you've probably found the right person. Not saying you don't think about it. You do focus on state of origin as well.
Yeah, and look, most people would think one lawyer is enough, but there's nothing wrong with having if you've had a lawyer for many years that's giving you, that's set up your business and giving you advice or sold all your properties for you or that sort of thing, and you love them and you want to stick with them, then that's also fine. You can have that lawyer then also get specific advice on this area of estate planning or whatever it might be. If you want to go and
you're not being unfaithful to your friend if you're going.
Right, you're not cheating.
Specialist advice.
Professional advisors.
No, and look, I strike that all the time. Most, everybody I deal with basically has a mate who's a lawyer or someone who's done their property work or their conveyancing or whatever it is, and and it's okay to. It's no different than going to the doctor and finding out you've got something serious wrong. Even your GP doctor would say go and see a specialist. So I think that's fine. How do you know who a good lawyer is? And I'll change that from a good lawyer. How do you know? What are some of the telltale signs in regard to if you're looking for a specialist estate planning lawyer?
Good question.
Doyle's?
I think it's good to ask around, because often word gets around. So if you have a trusted accountant or trusted financial planner or trusted advisor, ask who they've worked with and who they were impressed with or not, because that accountants and financial planners certainly have access to many different lawyers for many different clients. So I think ask around, ask your friends, ask your advisors, who have you seen in action that was fantastic, who did a great job. I think if you go to see a lawyer, some things to maybe look out for. It shouldn't be one size fits all. So it shouldn't be, here's what we do, this is it. A lawyer should be asking you about what your end goal is and what your wishes are, and then guide you there, I suppose, and give you the options to get there. But you don't want someone that you walk in their door and just says, right, this is what we're doing, this is how much it costs, this is the way we do it, because it's just not one size fits all. So be aware of that, I think.
Okay, there are some industry sort of recognition and awards and so on. That's why I mentioned, is it Doyle's before, that recognises people with certain qualifications in the estate succession planning area. Is there any other specialist recognition for people who do just specialise in estate and succession planning, or is it really something you've got to go and track down? There's no association as such, is there, which is one of my issues.
Not so much. You're right. There's some different industry recognition, such as Doyle's Guides or Australian Lawyers Awards. There's also, in most states, accredited specialist recognition in some different areas of law. So if there's a solicitor who is an accredited specialist in that area of law, they've had to have a certain amount of experience and then sit through some assessments to get that accreditation, which is an optional accreditation. But if they've done that, then they certainly know their stuff. So that's, they're the sort of things to look out for. It doesn't mean that people that, don't have that sort of flashy stuff aren't good lawyers by any means. And I suppose, that's where it comes back to word of mouth and referrals too. And that can be of just as much value.
Okay. Now, today, as every week, Juanita, thank you for your time. And can you just tell us a bit about, I want to give you a plug today. So can you just tell us a bit about Murdoch's Estate and Succession Planning Division, how many people are involved, and
Sure.
maybe just some of the credentials of people in your firm. And I want to recognise, your contribution to this every week. So here's the plug.
Thank you. Well, I suppose, as I said, another good thing to look at is having a team. So we're not a one-trick pony or one-man show. So we have a team that work on wills and estates across Toowoomba and Brisbane. We have some, five lawyers, 4 paralegals, and some support staff that are just totally focused on wills and estates. And by having that team, what it does is it allows us to have the right person doing the right job at the right level and at the right cost, so that delivers a better outcome for the client and keeps things moving. Our paralegals are fantastic at what they do, and it just helps the whole process run smoothly. So, we're headed up by Tom and Leanne in Toowoomba, who are both Doyle's Guide recognition. Tom's the only preeminent solicitor in wills and estates recognised outside Brisbane, which is a huge accolade. So, they have considerable experience in this area, and I man the Brisbane office here, but we're constantly working as a team and all working with each other and bouncing things off each other. So I think that's, probably one thing to look for when you've got a team that work together. It's usually going to create a better outcome.
Yeah. No, very good. So once again, thanks for your contribution again, Juanita. Appreciate it very much. And been an interesting topic, talking about all the things that we have today, and look forward to catching up next week, and your turn for the topic next week.
Oh, get thinking.
Okay, and go the Maroons.
Yes, go the Maroons.
Okay, see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks, mate. Bye.